right. This is going to be a good show. This kept me up this morning. We are going to touch on some things that I'm on this entrepreneur thing right now. It could be because I'm in the midst of it myself. And I definitely want to share with you some things. I was talking to my bishop about this, and I don't even know if he's going to listen to this. And I tripped over it too. How much do you guys know about the 1920s or the late 1800s to the 1920s in the South here in the United States of America? Wow. Good morning and good afternoon to some around the world. Good morning here in America. This is the Paul C. Dozier broadcast. The Paul C. Dozier broadcast. I am the chosen one for this particular show. I am God's chosen vehicle. A little while ago, what year was that? It was 2012. It was what month? March. It was 5 years ago. Five years ago, I graduated from a broadcasting school here in Southern California, and honestly, I was saying to myself, I do not know why I was going to this school. I got to tell you, I didn't understand it. But it's all kind of coming together for me now. I'm no radio personality. I love truth. And I'm going to tell you something with the background that I grew up in. I didn't grow up in a background of truth. I have the people that went to church and things like that, and but I grew up hustling. I grew up hustling. And listen, this all has to do with the radio program. Oh, let me do the full intro. This is the Paul C. Dozier broadcast, pcdradio.com, pcdradio.com. I would like for you to sign up on the YouTube channel, Paul C. Dozier. And if you're looking at this by way of video and not just audio, because I just signed up with SoundCloud too, so it's going to be on SoundCloud. So you could be just listening to this. So how you spell my last name is D as in David, Ozier. I want you to sign up. Let me know you're out there listening. Let me know this stuff is, this information that I'm giving you is helpful to you. And I gotta admit, this is not new information. I'm just delivering it in a way that I think is a little bit different. They say anytime you go into business, you have to have a target market. My target market really is young people coming up behind me. My daughter's age, which as of today, she's an old lady at 28. If she was listening to this, she would kill me for saying that. But younger than that, I say 16 to 24. Very few 40, 50, and 60-year-olds are listening. Very few 60-year-olds are listening to internet news programs from people like me. They're going to listen to the Hannitys, the Rush Limbaughs. They're going to listen to the Ingrams and the famous people on the big stations. So sign up with me. But anyway, like I was saying, I didn't grow up necessarily knowing how to operate in truth. I grew up, and I can't make myself sound like a poor kid because my mother was pretty much middle income, but she was busy out there with her friends, and I was hanging out with my cousins in Robert Taylor homes. I was the only child. They to my mother, so my cousins spent a lot of time not allowing me to go out around them because they were big time troublemakers, and they were concerned about the wrath of my mother, their aunt. My mother would dress me up in these middle class kids' clothes and send me to the projects. And being a big boy, I stood out, which made me uncomfortable. But because of that background, and I was talking to someone about this recently, because of that background, it made me a little cold. Well, not cold. Well, maybe cold. I don't know. Maybe I think I was cold in the sense that, I remember this one kid getting in my face and pointing a gun to my face, and me saying to him, "You might as well pull the trigger because you're going to die anyway." Because our family was pretty well known in the projects, and pretty involved with the culture of the stereotypical culture. How pretty much how white folks would stereotype a black person. We were there. we were there. So I grew up hustling. I grew up hustling one way or the other. I was trying to, whether I was hustling newspapers. I got my first job at McDonald's when I think I was 15, 16. I lied and said I was 18 or 17 or whatever. I was living in a place called the YMCA by the time I was 16. And going to high school, I remember one of my school teachers used to pick me up and take me to high school in my senior year. So I was, I had to do, I didn't have to do crazy things. And I have friends who did that. They were better hustlers than me. So, but I was around them. So, it wasn't a matter of telling a truth in the world that I came from. It was a matter of just getting the job done. There were a different set of rules which still applied. There were street rules, but they still applied. There were still codes of honor, codes of conduct, things of that nature. But for the most part, I got my basic education from hanging around in the neighborhood and with people. And my story, I don't know why I'm going through all this, but my story was a little bit different in that I saw the good neighborhood, I saw the bad neighborhood. So I hung out with the rich kids and I hung out with the poor kids. And I got to tell you, the rich kids got in more trouble, but had more grace and mercy on their side than the poor kids did. The rich kids were just as bad. They stole. They partook in the drug culture. In fact, better quality drug culture with the rich kids. So, but I got a chance to see both worlds, and my mother made sure of that. She did her best to get me out of the neighborhood. But the point is to be an entrepreneur. because that's what I'm on right now. I'm on being an entrepreneur. And I want to talk about business. I want to talk about ministry. I want to talk about politics. I've spoken a little bit about politics the first few shows. By the way, this is show number 4. And you guys keep me in your thoughts, because I want to continue to do this for the young people. I want to be able to get this out in some of the poorer countries of Africa, and not poor in the sense that they don't have resources, because they actually have more resources than us here in America, but some of the young people that are not being given an education. This is an education. I am not your typical radio host. I am an educator. I'm a teacher. And I am your chosen vessel. That's very important that you understand that. So far, we've gone over the seven areas of community, and I got to give a shout out and give credit to Dr. Welsing, Cress Welsing, who broke it down very well in a book called The ISIS Papers. It's up here somewhere. I don't know where I put it. I've lost more books over the years. I don't even know what. I didn't like to read up until I was 28 years old. I didn't start reading really until I was about 28 years old. I read some books, because I had to, being a high school student. But I didn't really start reading until I was 28 years old. And to be quite frank with you, I haven't read a book in the last couple of months, and it's bothering me. I've been busy trying to do this. But in the ISIS Papers, the 9 areas of community, we've been talking about that, and also touched on relationships, which I would like to touch on a little bit more of. In fact, I'm going to kind of touch on it today, because what I want to do is start to build a program where you almost have to go back to these first few programs to understand where we're going to be going. If God wills, God permits, I'm going to push forward to do it. Because once we take off, we're going to take off, and so I talk about the importance of understanding language. And so I want you young people to understand the language that I'm speaking. So I am speaking very on purpose, methodically. I'm speaking very simply because I want you to get some of these lessons. And I'm going to be playing and reading to you, sharing with you some of the successes and a tragic story in African American history here. Not the whole tale, but I'm going to give you one of the greatest examples of entrepreneurship here in America, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, from 1830 to 1921, when it was destroyed, methodically destroyed, on purpose destroyed. I'm also going to share with you a couple of audio sound clips of a man here by the name of Damon Dash. Now, if you don't know Damon Dash, famously known as Dame Dash, he is one of the today I guess he would be considered a father of the hip-hop generation. Although I wouldn't call him one of the fathers. That's to me, that's, there was a generation before him, so I wouldn't call him a father. And also, there were more. And I know he would agree with this. There were more brothers of greater depth as it comes to the hip hop generation. But he is one of the fathers of turning it into a business. The hip hop generation. one of the best that it was a man by the name of Russell Simmons, who came right before Damon Dash hit the scene. But we have Dame Dash on audio, and I was gonna play some stuff from Kenya, but I don't think I'm gonna do that right now. I don't think it's the right time. But we're gonna have a good show today. And I'll be back after this. Listen to my couple of commercials here.
Partner with us. We have a global mission to support business development all over the world. PCDradio.com. PCDradio.com. Join the society. We are this generation's group of leaders building people around the world. The societyofbusiness.com. The societyofbusiness.com.
I actually own the societyofbusiness.com, the societyofelducation.com, the societyofpolitics.com, the society of, I think, ministry. Yeah, the society of ministry. Business, education, ministry, and politics. .com. The society of any of those.com leads to the Society of the Apostles website. And just to give you an idea of what that is, one of the challenges that I see right now, and especially the African experience, is the inability to work together. I'm not going to say inability. That's the wrong word. I'm going to say we second guess each other. So the idea for me is to put together a society of people who want to work together with the same core values, which is building up a community of people in education, in business, in ministry, and in politics, and being able to stand together around the world as a society, as a lot of these groups have. There are a lot of groups out there that have. I would like for it to be somewhat of a fraternity, where we're able to travel around the world and help people in business, in ministry, in education, in politics. I worked on that website for about 3 years, if not more, collectively about 3 years. And right now, I'm just letting it be. It is built out. It is ready whenever I can put together the group of people for that. I believe in being ready. I believe I'm ready with that website. So what we want to do is we want to take young people and we want to help them become successful. And we want to network with people who have some wisdom, or even lack the wisdom and want wisdom. We definitely want to get together with people who are interested in being successful. Okay. The entire program today is going to be about attitude and having the right attitude or having the wrong attitude in business, being an entrepreneur. Now, when I say business, I really mean ministry as well. Anything that you have to start up and you have to be a part, you have to get other people involved with. Any type of enterprise that involves social capital, human capital, people. It involves people. Because not only in business, not only and ministry, not only do you have to be concerned about your product and your service, you have to be concerned about your team. whether it's in business, whether it's in ministry, because you're not going to do it alone. Even if you're in business for yourself, by yourself, just you and your friend, or you and your wife, or whatever, or if it's just you by yourself, you still need a support team, even if they're not a member of your particular company. So you still need, irregardless of whatever direction you go, you're going to need relationships. And I'm going to tell you something, being very, very clear. Let me make it very, very clear. The biggest mistake I have made through my life is not maintaining excellent relationships. Because in the culture that I grew up in, and not blaming my past, because my past is not my present, but I grew up with the mind, especially at my age, but I grew up with the mindset that I couldn't trust very many people. I might, you may not be like me, but I grew up with the mindset that you couldn't trust very many people. So, with that mindset, and also being sensitive, and being able to see things, or in my brain, I can see things, especially when you've gone through it before. I stopped short of allowing myself to experience pain with certain people. I was talking to someone about this, my mentor, in fact, because you get tired of experiencing the pain. And so, you grow up with this way of thinking and don't realize that, if you're not willing to experience some pain, you're not going to have very good relationships, because you're going to have pain involved with some relationships. But you have to be accepting of that. You have to be okay with discovering, good and bad, because both come. It's something, even at this age that I'm at right now, I'm still getting used to. Because it's a work in me today. Okay, full disclosure, just letting you know. But you can't stay in that place. So you have to get out and build relationships. And so any entrepreneur knows how to make good relationships. And in relationship, there are different levels of relationship. There's business relationships. There are social relationships. But you have to know what role you play in that relationship. In any of them. So if you're building a business, it's very important that you understand that. So what I'm gonna share with you is I'm going to share with you a couple of clips with Damon Dash, and then I'm going to talk. I'm gonna stay on for. I'm actually gonna spend the whole 2 hours with this, because I want to talk about Black Wall Street, which was the area here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And my mentor is on this as well at the church. And I missed that because I was busy doing this. But I want to share this with you, and so that you have an idea of what it takes. And again, I'm neither Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal. That's very important. I don't play parties. The thing that I'm most interested in is the truth. Because if we can operate the truth, then the truth gets rid of all that left and right stuff, the conservative, liberal. We just want the truth. We just want to know what works. And we want to go after that thing right there. That right there is all we care about. What works. So the question was asked to Damon Dash. I'm gonna play a lot of this clip, and this is from Hip Hop Motivation, his YouTube channel. So I got to give a shout out to Damon Dash and Kenyatta Griggs, who created this audio clip on YouTube. And the question was asked to him: will the Trump presidency hinder the success of African Americans? And I want you to hear the answer.
Your black entrepreneurship.
Nothing should impair an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur does not get given anything. An entrepreneur goes and takes it. Yeah. That's what makes you an entrepreneur. It might affect people that want welfare. Right. It might affect people that want jobs. All that might get affected. But if you're doing things, if you can know how to rub two sticks, pause, and make fire, then it doesn't matter who's the president.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there because, this little 9-minute and 7-second clip is rich. Absolutely rich. But I want to discuss with you what he just said. And quite frankly, as painful as it has been, I have found this to be true all of my life. All of my life. I've had people in my life who were concerned about me because I'm constantly doing things like this, starting radio programs. I've bought property with no money down, and I've taken time off work and done some traveling and done things in ministry and for no money and just I've done what I would call enjoying my life. I don't want to live with any regrets at all. Any regrets at all. I want to live my life as though I did everything that my heart desired. The heart of an entrepreneur is not driven by money. I'm drilling this home for a reason. Hold on, let me cough. I'm drilling this home for a reason. In the neighborhood, you are held captive. I don't care what neighborhood you're from. You could be from Kumasi. You could be from the hills of Costa Rica. You could be in Mexico City. You could be in Compton or Chicago. I can only tell you about the places I've been to. So, I can't go too many places. Other than maybe Portland, Alabama, I guess I can go a few more places. I guess, I've been around the country here, and I've been to a few countries outside of here. It doesn't matter, because the idea of living your life is more important than making money. And hear what I'm saying on this, because you can always make money. In an entrepreneur's mind, which is this mind right here, which is the mind that I have, I can always make money. If it's just about making money, I grew up hustling to make money. So if that's your motivation, now it becomes when you first get started, it becomes a survival motivation because you have to pay the bills. You got to figure it out. But when it comes down to being successful, even as a hustler, you got to know the principles of community. He's breaking it down right here in this simple. I'm telling you, this is going to be God willing, this is going to be an education. This is going to be a PhD of getting over yourself and understanding that you have to pursue that which you love to do. God is giving you an ornate amount of talent, and you're going to have to get to the place where you're willing to go after that. Because if you're working for money, a lot of you are unhappy anyway. If you're working for money, a lot of you are not making enough of it anyway. You know, if you're pursuing money, a lot of folks that pursue money, they pursue money, they buy stuff, they make more money, they buy more stuff, and they're still unhappy, so they think they have to make more money. That is what has been taught to you from a European perspective, because the world needs consumers. Now, I'm not going to go too far into it of how you've been taught to be a consumer throughout your generations, throughout our generations, because you have to make a consumer class. So you create a consumer class. And we'll get into some more history maybe later on. But what Damon is talking about here is it doesn't matter who's in office. It does not matter the environment. And I love what he said. If you can rub two sticks together and make a fire, that means it doesn't matter where you're at. You can be an entrepreneur. In fact, in fact, putting it real, we were all born to be entrepreneurs.
People that want welfare, it might affect people that want jobs, all that might get affected. But if you're doing things, if you can know how to rub two sticks, pause, and make fire, then it doesn't matter who's the president.
Yeah.
So, because what the government does is they put you on these welfare type ideals, and the government. So let me break down government to you. Because government is a lot more intense than I think a lot of people understand. If you can't afford to buy your kids food, the government steps in and buys your kids food for school. And then there's a completely different government program for home. That's the welfare state. If you're having a problem with your husband or your wife, the government steps in and decides what's best for your marriage or for your relationship. The government steps in. That's when you get police records. And a lot of people in this country don't even realize that if you get a police record, then you no longer qualify for that government stuff. You know, depending on the type of police record that you get. So they separate the families. This was done, by the way, this was done many years in the past. Just differently. The language changes. This is why I'm telling you, and this is why I'm so adamant about you understanding you have to learn the language of your community. You know, and it doesn't matter what community you're in. You have to learn the language. What I mean by that is you have to learn what laws are being written and what they actually mean. You know, you have to learn what the politicians are saying, what they're actually saying. Not what they say when they stand on stage, but how it effectively affects you. You have to learn what the people are teaching. What's being taught in your school is not all of the information you need to be successful. They're not giving you all the information. You're not getting it. You know, in fact, you don't need to go to school to learn 2 + 2. That used to be the responsibility. When I was a kid, that used to be the responsibility of us before we even went into first grade. You kind of had a basic understanding of that from home. You know, what our kids need to learn at an early age is economics more than arithmetic. Because in successful societies, in societies who are not consumers only, in their schools, these kids are learning about economics from a very young age, because economics is what drives a community. But when you're in a welfare state, when you have laws and things going after you, in a welfare state where you're depending on the government to pay you, or depending on an employer to pay you, that means you're willing to do whatever they want you to do to get your paycheck. And that's economic slavery. You should write that down. Economic slavery. There's a book I've started it, but I have not finished, called The Wealth of Nations. For most of you, that would probably take a year to get through. In fact, what we might do, God willing, is take a Wealth of Nations and just study it. Because pretty much what they're doing in the book is bragging about how you take advantage of individual people who are just unaware, in my opinion. But it's a must read. You have to read. We have to read The Wealth of Nations. And there are many books out there that teach us this, because you have to change your whole mindset. You have to change your whole prospective, perception, and perspective. I was trying to remember that yesterday. You have to change the way you see things. You have to completely take off what you think you know and start thinking differently, which is a very, very hard thing to do. And what Dame Dash is telling you is, it does all these things they tell you that matters, they don't matter. It doesn't matter whether the economy goes up, the economy goes down. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether one president is in the office or the other. These guys are just employees. They're owned. They're just employees. It doesn't matter what they do. You know, our president gets a little bit over $400,000 a year, probably, I think, for the rest of his life. It doesn't matter. His life is in good shape. He's in the club. He's gonna be all right. You know, and I'm gonna prove it to you right here in this next story after we talk about it, because what matters is community. What matters is making the right relationships with the right people for the right reasons. It's in having a community, a group of people who stand for the same thing. All right, we're going to continue.
It's like, to me, that's what people was the president when Black Wall Street was going on. Just ask yourself that question. Yeah. And they was cracking. It was going down. They destroy that whole town. Yeah. So the president wanted to. Oh, absolutely. For the governor, when they speak up on it, nobody went to jail for it. Yeah, exactly. That's the movie that should be done. Like, I mean, again, it should be done. I wasn't there. If I know somebody that can tell me it's enough books, it's enough manuscripts to put you there. I'm saying this, when I make a movie, me personally, right. I like to be like, if it's not fiction and it's about fact, right. Someone got to be alive to tell me exactly what happened, because I want to make sure I make it right. People alive, so why don't you make the movie? Hey, why don't you make the movie? That's a very good possibility here. That's a very high possibility. That's out of my reach.
So, and I like to hear these. I like to hear these men talk. But they're saying something that's very, very interesting here, and then they reference Black Wall Street, which is in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's a historical era. It's a historical area. Now, but it's interesting what he said. It's a couple of points of what he said there. He's saying that as far as because a lot of people may not be familiar with the 1920s, 1830s to the 1920s. It was during a time of war. It was during a time of war, World War One, I believe. And you know, the emancipation of the slaves and that sort of thing, and you know, all these people gathered in this particular town. So and then, well, the slave thing coming out in the 1800s, and then World War One in the 1900s, and the United States economy was suffering in the 1900s. These people were blooming. They were not blooming. They were booming. They were growing. They were doing well. They were doing just fine. So it's not based upon what people say it is. And not only were they doing well, there were groups of people all over this country when they were calling it a Great Depression who were doing well. There were families like the Morgans. They were doing well. The Rockefellers. They were doing well. So it's interesting because if you understand how things work, you can still do well when things are not doing very well for a lot of other people. These are the things that are not taught in our educational systems. How to do that, unless you're going to the right schools that are teaching you some of these things, where you won't have to suffer that. So that's the reason why I'm sharing these things with you, so that you understand that getting up every day and looking to your president, your village leader, your pastor, your alderman, your assemblyman, and blaming them for the environment, the state of the economy, as they would call it, or what's going on in the neighborhood, or what's going on in the village, or what's going on in the state, or wherever, is a waste of time. It's a waste of thought. It has absolutely nothing to do with you feeding your family. It has absolutely nothing to do with you feeding yourself. You know, I gotta tell you, you know, just my ability to sit here and do this right here, I would not have this ability unless I had some sort of resources to do it, because I'm not operating as a finance manager, which is my profession, and how I raised my kids, or helped raise my kids over the years that I did. And there were some things that I've learned that helped me give me the time to do the things that I'm doing legally, hustling, so that I can come to you and share these things with you. So you can't blame. You can't sit back. You can't believe what's being told to you in the media. Remember what I told you? The media is one of the 9, right? And I'm not saying you can't trust them. I'm saying you have to learn how to listen to these people. Listen to these organizations that are owned by these multi-billion-dollar corporations, trillion-dollar corporations in some cases, and their job is to turn you into a consumer. A consumer is someone that just wants everything that they see. I know a lady right now, because I live a very simple life on purpose. I live a very, very simple life. And she knows me, so she's when she came over to the house, she thought she would come to this palatial house, and literally her mouth dropped because of how simple I live. Because she thought but unless you there's nothing. I would love to have a big, spacious home, but not for the sake of having a big, spacious home. Let me give you an example. There's a very famous man here in America by the name of Mike Tyson. He's a boxer. And another one by the name of Holy Vanderfield. He's a boxer. Mr. Vanderfield and Mr. Tyson bought major mansions when they were making millions of dollars. Mansions with bathrooms over 8 and 9 bathrooms inside the house. At the time, Mr. Holyfield, although did have many children, probably didn't need, I believe it was a 14 bathroom house. Mr. Holyfield suffered from some financial loss. So it's not a matter of having the large stuff or becoming a consumer. It's knowing how to do it. And then if that's what you want, that's what you want. But making sure that you understand the economics of having something like that. Because it has to be kept. So even if it was paid off, you still got to keep, and pay for all of that. But with the consumer's mind, if you're constantly looking at TV and constantly watching people drive down the streets and constantly listening to the radio, and constantly watching people with the $35,000 watches and the big necklaces out to here, you say, "Ooh, I want that." That is a consumer's brain. And that brain will cost you. It will cost you a lot because things ebb and flow all the time. So what's my point? My point is stepping away from the consumer mentality and then picking up a completely different train of thought. And in picking up this completely different train of thought, that means you have to become a completely different person. One that's not necessarily looking to please anybody with your particular lifestyle. So it doesn't matter whether you live in the village. It doesn't matter whether the country's doing well or the country's doing bad. If you know how to listen to the language that is being spoken, to the words that people are using, you'll know where the blessing is. Based upon I wish someone taught me this when I was younger. But you'll hear where you fit in. And that's more important than anything. Let's continue on with this for a little while, then we'll go to break and come back and we'll talk about Black Wall Street.
Just like you with that.
You're inspired by it.
Yeah.
That's what happens. If something inspires me and I have personal experience with it, I'm going to definitely make it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that would be a great movie.
So make it.
Any questions here?
What was the biggest challenge in creating the brand?
When you really 100% are the brand, there is no challenge.
Okay, listen to what he's saying. Okay, I want to listen because this was not as clear as I wish it was. But the question is, what's the biggest challenge creating a brand? And I want you to hear this because this is my biggest challenge with myself. It is extreme. Even knowing this and understanding this, this is a very, very hard thing. If you didn't grow up learning these principles, which I personally did not, this is a very, very hard thing to do. What's the biggest challenge in building a brand? Let me explain to you what a brand is. Because I think when a person thinks brand, they think about a company like Knorr, Knor, and you look at the packaging and the way the wording is on the package. It's bigger than that. You think of Pampers here in America, Pampers and Huggies, which are diapers. But those two companies were so big in the diaper business, people would literally say the words Huggies or diapers or Huggies or Pampers before they said diapers, because Huggies and Pampers took over the market. Pampers first, and then Huggies came in right behind them. So it's building a brand where that brand is so big, it literally takes over the market. One example would be Beyonce is a brand. You don't need to call it Beyonce Knowles. All you have to do is say Beyonce. Dame Dash is a brand. Jay-Z is a brand. Tiger Woods is a brand. Tiger Woods is not playing golf very well, but Tiger Woods is a brand. He has a foundation. He also builds golf courses. He is an enterprise. So it's understanding how the principles, and Dame Dash is going to talk about some of the most important principles of building a brand, building an enterprise, being self-employed, working for yourself, and at the same time building a brand. Listen to this.
Biggest challenge in creating the brand.
When you really 100% are the brand, there is no challenge. You know what I'm saying? Creating it and contriving it, that's the challenge. You know, you gotta get somebody. You gotta go pay, like, when a hedge fund buys a company, then they go and they have to hire an infrastructure to make the brand work. They go get somebody to give them, creative direction on every level. They have to spend a lot of money opening stores. Now, if you don't have money, that's a problem, because to do all those things. But if you do have money, it's not a problem. But when you really are the brand that you say you are, if you're the person you present yourself to be, it's easy. You just have to be consistent. It's just building a brand. The most challenging thing is the time it takes. Because
Okay, so what he said was building the brand. And I'm slowing this down because I want you to catch these, because I want to finish up with this, because I have another one I want to play in the second hour. The politics of black business, and you can find these clips on YouTube under Hip Hop Motivation. Hip Hop Motivation is Damon Dash's YouTube channel. So I got to give him a shout out, because this is his stuff. He also has a book coming out. A movie coming out, speaking about some of these same principles that we're talking about right now. The second clip is going to be talking about the politics of black businesses. So we'll talk about that on the second half, and I can't believe I've already gone through an hour. But I'm going to take a break and play one of my songs, just so I can run out and get Yeah. So, but anyway, so what Damon said here is, in building a brand, you're really building yourself. It's not a problem. But there are two things that he talked about. One thing is consistency. He quietly talked about a third thing. If you're building yourself, it's not a problem, because building yourself means you have to know who you are. That's very important. You have to know who you are. You have to know who you are. If you don't know who you are, you can't build your brand. You have to know what it is that you're good at. What you're bringing to the table. So consistency and knowing what you're bringing to the table is extremely important. I'm going to bring this back just a little bit because I want to sneak something in here. Give me 1 second. All right, here we go. Watch this or listen to this.
Problem, because to do all those things. But if you do have money, it's not a problem. But when you really are the brand that you say you are, if you're the person you present yourself to be, it's easy. You just have to be consistent. It's just building a brand. The most challenging thing is the time it takes.
And it does take time. And so that's the reason why you need consistency. So it's knowing who you are, what your talent is, what you're bringing to the table. And it's being consistent and giving it time. I am primarily a teacher of spiritual truth. Now, I have been saying that for I don't know how many years. I have been challenged in my own brain to believe it. But there is nothing else that I enjoy doing as much as I enjoy doing this, to the point where I put my own money into it. There was a famous saying years ago that you find what you enjoy doing, whether there's profit or not, and then someone will pay you for it. But that's part of the hustle. You have to perfect it. You have to go after it. You have to believe it. Because if you don't listen, if you don't believe it, if you don't educate yourself, if you don't take the time to invest in yourself, if you can't be consistent and put the time into it and know exactly who you are, then it's hard to be an entrepreneur. It's very hard to be an entrepreneur, because those are all things that you have to do. That's where the mindset has to change. And you can change the mindset. I didn't start reading until I was 28 years old. I didn't start really educating myself on purpose until just 22 years ago.
Because to be a brand, you have to be repetitive to something. You have to get known for doing something over and over again. And you can't be known as a brand overnight. You have to be known for doing it. Even hustling. Even hustling. Your brand was, for me, when you sold crack, the brand was the color top. Right? That was your brand. And no one could use that color on that block but you if you claimed that color. Because you didn't want anybody to put whack work with that color and then compromise the brand.
Okay, now, so he's talking about when he was a drug dealer. I'm not suggesting you do anything like that. But the principles are the same. And this is what I want people to understand. The principles are the same. Excuse me. The principles are the same. The idea behind becoming successful means that you have to understand what the principles are, and you have to work those principles. I'm just saying, at some point you're just going to have to understand that. And unless you understand that, then you're just in trouble. Paul C. Dozier broadcast. This is the Paul C. Dozier broadcast. Back for the second hour. This is fun. This is a lot of fun. But I tell you, because what happens is, and I hope you caught the first hour. Maybe some people came in on the second hour, but I hope you caught the first hour where we were talking about some of the things that you just have to be aware of within yourself. You got to get to a point where you see yourself as a perpetual student for the rest of your life. And the goal is to get around people who also see themselves as students. The greatest teachers I know are the greatest students. They're constantly asking questions and learning. One of my best mentors today is a great student. The man blows me away. He's been married for over 35 years, and he's constantly asking questions. You know, his father was married for 61 years before he passed away. Just an amazing person. Just has great success, a great family. All of his children are successful, and he is constantly asking questions and challenging himself to improve. And that's where we have to be. It's not a matter of, trying to get a check from the government or trying to get a check, get money from the... I get these, because I've done a little bit of traveling, I sometimes get people that will constantly call me and ask me, not constantly, well, once they met me, but they call and ask me for money, as though the money is going to solve the problem. The money is not going to solve your problem. What has to be solved is the mindset. The money just doesn't solve the problem. Well, money answers all things, the Bible says. I can hear some of you Christians speaking. Money answers all things. Money will answer a lot of things in my life as well, but there's a mindset that you have to have. So when you get the money, you know what to do with it. You know how to handle it. You have to have a mindset. And so that's why I wanted to play that first clip for you. This next clip I'm going to play for you too. And I'm trying to make a decision on whether I should play the clip or go off into the Black Wall Street thing. And I think I'm going to play the clip first. And because I want you to, it's a long clip, so and I want you to pay attention to. I'm going to interpret what he said anyway, because as simple as he's trying to put it, I think it needs to be even simpler than that for a lot of people, so that you understand what he's saying about, and catch this, he's meeting these people for the first time in their world. He's going to our capital for meetings, and he's meeting these people for the first time in their world. And I want you to catch what happened.
Convention. I said it correctly.
Right.
And to talk on a panel about Black Money Matters. And
Black Money Matters?
Black Money Matters. And there's an agenda to keep the black dollar in the black community and to invest back into the black bank.
Okay.
And I spoke on a panel with presidents of of black banks and people that were into wealth management and just overall making money. And then after that, I was able to talk to a couple of congressmen and really understand the game. I don't think people understand that, Congress is probably a little more important than the president, because they're the ones that, vote on the law. They pass the law. A president can't pass a law. You know what I'm saying? And I was really happy about the fact that, number one, there was, a black presence in Washington of really smart people that really know the game of Congress. There's some people that are in power, and that they were really concerned about our culture.
Okay, so let me stop right there. So, just in case you don't know, Damon Dash is a former drug dealer from the United States, and and I'm saying this because, again, most of my audience is in Africa, but here a lot of the people know who Damon Dash is in the United States, so I really don't have to make this introduction. He partnered with a man I'm sure most of you know by the name of Sean Carter, and became his business manager. Sean Carter is Jay-Z. And so he started off him and Jay-Z started off with a fair amount of money because of where they got their money from. These were the street guys. These were the gangsters. And so Damon Dash is a relatively young guy. He's younger than I am. I think he's born in 1971, which makes him about 45 years old right now. So his success came in his 20s. He's always been successful. He was operating in principles from the time he was on the street, and he brought those principles into the business world. Now, catch what I'm saying. Now he's meeting people in the political world. And what he's about to tell you surprised him, because he thought that they would look at him differently. And I'm not sure if I should say this before or after, but he's really no different than them at all, because they're hustlers too. They learned the principles differently. Most of them, not all of them did. Most of them did. But they're hustlers too. They're entrepreneurs. Now, when I use that word hustlers, I don't use that word as to me that's a term of endearment. Because I'm not as good as Damon Dash is, and I'm not as good as Elijah Cummings, and and a lot of these people are. But hey, I have not lost any weight at all. I eat pretty good and drive pretty good. I live in Southern California. Take a trip here and there. I'm pretty fortunate. I don't have the resources all these guys do, but I'm pretty fortunate. So I love the word hustler and entrepreneur, because listen to what I'm saying, because I'm going slow because I want to, and I want you guys to understand, because all I'm doing is I'm taking language. Hustler and entrepreneur is the same thing. It's the same thing. Business owner, investor, stakeholder. It's the same thing in different communities. It's understanding the language. It's understanding how you fit in, where you fit in. It's understanding how to take it from here to here, so that you can have so that your territory can be enlarged. That's a Christian term. You enlarge my territory, but you're really looking for more influence. That's a different term, In the street it'd be something completely different. It's called the takeover. You see, So it all depends on how you look at it. But you got to learn language. You got to learn language, and you have to have the right mindset to understand that just because the environment changes doesn't mean that you're any less worthy of being in that environment. Listen to this.
Like genuinely trying to figure out a way to make us as a culture. Yeah. Like it was, I was, the way they embraced me and the things that they knew about me were surprising to me.
So that just really robbed like.
Well, you would think sometimes if people are conscious, they might look down at people from hip hop.
Okay.
But it wasn't like that. It was like I felt like they appreciated. I felt like they appreciated what I was trying to do my way.
Okay, so what he was saying was he thought because he went to Congress that they would look down on him because of what he's done in hip hop. This man helped to create a hip hop culture. So a couple things I want you to catch from this. Number one, he's humble. That's number one. Some people will look at that the wrong way and consider it insecurity. No, that's humility. There's a rule when you walk into a person's house that you should walk into a person's house with humility. And that's how he walked into their house. He walked into their house with humility. And he greeted them. Or he walked into their culture. That way you learn. Because if you don't walk in with humility, you don't learn. And quite frankly, because no one will want to teach you. Because you're walking in as though you already got it figured out. So there are a lot of lessons being learned here. A lot of things to pick up here. So he went to Congress and he was under the impression that they would look at him in one way, and he was surprised. By the way, they weren't surprised. That's something else. That's another day. They weren't surprised. Because, as he said, they knew all about him. They knew all about him. Couple things to keep in mind here. First of all the people he met were older than him. And had been in their game longer than him. Now, that particular rule, whether you're in the village, in the neighborhood, or in the boardroom, city, state, whatever, that particular rule, where I come from, is called the ancestors and the elders. So he went into now he may even have more money than the elders that he's talking to. The ancestors have passed. He may even have more money than the elders that he's talking to. May have more money. Chances are not. These are people who have streets named after them and buildings named after them, and they're literally living legends. in the African American community, wielding great influence socially. And not only the African American community, but in the community, and a lot of them international influence. When I talk about influence, I'm talking about relationships. Your influence has nothing to do with your stuff. It has to do with your relationships. You know, there are influential people who don't make lots of money in comparison to Zuckerberg with Facebook, Bill Gates, Microsoft, Steve Jobs, the former, he's passed on now, but the former creator of Apple, Michael Dell Computer. But there are people who have influence like Gandhi and Mother Teresa. Martin Luther King was a comfortable man, but not a wealthy man. Marcus Garvey had influence. W.E.B. Du Bois spent a lot of his money and his wife's money, but had influence. Paul Dunbar, influence. So the idea is raising the capital, the human capital, in your relationships. This is what Damon Dash was doing, and he was going to the elders in our community to sit down and meet with them. And by the way, you can't go to these meetings unless you're invited anyway.
Like, I have to appreciate what they have to do their way.
Did they bring up the Breakfast Club, like that interview or anything?
It was like overall, you know, one of the congressmen from Indianapolis, he knew everything. You know what I mean? And this conversation was really, I was really impressed. You know what I mean? And you know, I guess there's a due process, and you know, politics is politics, but you know, to know that culturally we are doing things.
Right,
and instead of like,
behind the scenes, people don't know about it.
It's just instead of complaining about the problem, it's like having an answer for the problem.
Right.
You know, and that there is an answer, it just takes effort to be consistent and knowing, you know, where to focus your energy. You know what I'm saying? It's just, you know, you don't want to waste your time being angry without any action.
And that's so true. You don't want to waste your time being angry and not having any action. And I also love what he said about the congressman from Indianapolis. Main reason why is because, first of all, you don't want to underestimate people. And second of all, for people to be successful, they are well studied. They are well studied. If they're inviting you to your house, you can believe that they know something about you. If they're inviting you to be a part of who they are. Now, Damon's not saying, or Mr. Dash isn't saying what the whole purpose of him being there was about. Because again, like he said, he was speaking there. But anytime an elder invites you in, you know what I'm saying? And I wish I understood this when I was in my 20s and 30s. I gotta tell you this story. I remember when I was coming out of high school, and you know, people would ask me what I wanted to be, and I said I want to be a businessman. You know, I was 13, 14 years old. That's the first thing that I want to be a businessman. I don't know what a businessman, you know. But that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a businessman. And I remember coming out of high school. I think I was 17 years old at the time. And when I graduated from high school in 1984, June of 84, I think I was 17. and or however old I was, maybe I was 18. And the first thing I did was I did get enrolled in school. I went to school for mechanics and ITT Technical Institute, and I remember I was scratching up my hands. I said, I'm not doing this. So I dropped out of school. And I knew immediately I had to go find a job, which wasn't foreign to me. I had jobs before as a kid. Yeah, anyway, so I had to go find a job. At the time, I worked for a deli, and then I worked for McDonald's. And then I graduated from school, and I lived on the north side, and so going down near north, where I wasn't doing that anymore. So when I graduated from high school, I thought I was a man. So I needed a job. So I needed a professional job. I want to be a businessman. And one of the jobs that I got, long story short, one of the jobs that I got is I got a job as a mortgage broker. Right around the time I think I was 18 or 19 years old. Now, I'm 19 years old and I'm selling mortgages, making cold calls, that sort of thing. My boss died. I convinced the owner of the place to keep it open. And he said, I'll give you a year. He gave me a year. And I met an older man who has seen me on the street consistently, going from place to place, trying to sell my program. I'll never forget this guy. And he challenged me one day. He asked me to come to a meeting, and I came to a meeting. I think at this time I was 19 years old. Maybe I was 20 by that time. I don't think so. I think I was 19 at the time. I might have been 20. And I came to a meeting, and in this meeting were some people, some black men. I want to say maybe 8 or 9 black men. And those 8 or 9 black men were sitting in this room, and they were thinking about taking their collective businesses and starting one business. And that's what they did. And they said, well, if you want to be a part of this, you're going to have to come up with $5,000. And just because he told me that, and kind of looked at me like, you're never going to get the money, it made me go out and find $5,000. I got the $5,000 and I came back and brought it back to him. I was 20 years old, and this was in the 80s. 1986 or 7 or something like this. And when I brought back that $5,000, he was shocked. I knew it. He was just shocked, and I brought it back in 2 or 3 days. And I signed a stock certificate for $5,000, and I left. And about a week later, I said, I want my money back, and went back, got my money. That man never stopped me from getting the money. He was an elder. I wish at that time he would have told me, son, listen, this is who we are. He was one of the largest black investors in Chicago. He owned property all over the city. The owner of Gino's Pizza, which was a major frozen food person, was in the room. And I couldn't even tell you who the other ones were, but they were pretty impressive as well. But back then, at 20 years old, I didn't even pay attention to the people that I had around me. But these were some of the most powerful people in the city of Chicago. And they didn't tell me who they were. They wanted me to see it. So what I'm saying to you is this. Successful people are very humble people, and they already know if they're inviting you into their environment. They know everything that they need to know about you before even inviting you in, especially to speak on their stage. To take part in what they're doing. So it's a matter of you honoring your elders, but being also taking responsibility for educating yourself and making your own way to a certain degree and having consistency. And then being a great example so that when it is your time, you're ready. But it's all up to you because you draw it in, because people can tell by your conversation, by your presence, by your activity, what you're doing. Let's continue on for a little bit and then we'll go into, I can't believe the time is going by, but we'll go into the Black Wall Street. Just a little bit longer.
You know, and anger shouldn't always fuel, your action. But it makes you aware of what needs to be changed. Whereas you can't carry it as like luggage. You know what I'm saying? Just go fix it. Like put the energy into fixing things and just knowing how to. You know. And so I think it's cool to understand how to change things as opposed to just speaking on it and say what things should be. Really understanding how to make things happen. You know.
What was your main? What did you really talk about on stage? Like, what was your main point that you wanted to get across?
You know, my thing was, it seems like unless someone from another culture is telling us that it's right, we don't think it's right.
All right, this is the part that I wanted you to catch, and then we're done with this clip. What we're going to talk about, what he's going to talk about here, is how we treat each other in the African community. You know, I even saw it in Ghana where a sister told me, she said, be careful of the Nigerians. A Ghanaian sister told me to be careful of the Nigerians. They'll rob you blind. So it's not just, a black thing here in America. There's a deep-rooted thing we can talk about maybe another day. But it's how we communicate with each other. It's how we think of each other. He's going to address this right here. I'm going to back this up right here at 3 minutes and 41 seconds. And pay attention to this dialogue here. It's crucial to where we're going, even with this program.
That you wanted to get across.
You know, my thing was, it seems like unless someone from another culture is telling us that it's right, we don't think it's right. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, like, as far as supporting your own businesses. My thing was like, we'll probably support it if we see other people, if we see other cultures supporting it, then we'll support it. But we don't ever generally just completely support each other. You know what I'm saying? But like, it takes someone else from another culture to validate us, or to validate. Like, there's things that I've told people and given them advice, and they don't listen, and then someone from another culture gives them the same advice, and then they do
The whole concept of white ice being colder than black ice.
it just makes it more credible. You know what I'm saying? And genuine, like traditionally speaking, our culture doesn't like to buy things made from our culture because it doesn't seem aspirational. We like to buy things from other cultures.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, the minute you start targeting our culture, we don't like you.
Because we want to buy into that lifestyle.
A different lifestyle. We want to buy into something that we like to have.
Polo to Jace.
Right.
Luxury.
Right. And Ralph Lauren is from the Bronx.
So this is crucial what he's saying here. Because one of the things that we need to repair in ourselves is trust. We need to get to a place where we can trust each other so that we can all collectively succeed together, because the challenge we have right now is breaking the stereotype in our own minds. You know, I recently said to a group of people, I think I might even put it on social media, is white supremacy has no power other than the power that you give it. And what I meant by that is, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist in the minds of some people. But what I am saying is that it has about as much power as you give it, which simply means that if you're hindered by it or you're strengthened by it, that's on you. There is, because the two words together, white and supremacy, doesn't make sense. There is no supremacy between white, green, black, yellow. It doesn't make sense. And you say, well, Paul, you know what it means. Okay, fine. So white comes out of black. So it still makes no sense. No matter how you look at those two words sitting together and used in a sentence, it makes no sense. White supremacy. We also have these conversations about racism. This person's a racist, that person's a racist. You can't be a racist because you're black. You are a racist because you're white. Racism. And we have those conversations. These things make absolutely no sense. I am not denying that our people have suffered from the thoughts of people who enslaved you physically, but more importantly, enslaved you with the words that they used. We were enslaved physically, and we were enslaved with the words that, these days, we're being enslaved with the words that are being used over us. This story I'm going to read you, and we're going to talk about before we run out of time, is a story about an entire district in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a thriving city here in the south of the United States. This city was so thriving that during tough times, they weren't having tough times. It was a historic city, and there was a race riot in the city, but it wasn't quite a race riot. There was an argument about a black man hitting on a white woman, which drew fire to this district in Tulsa. So there were shots fired, and there was just a significant chain of events. Now, I'm reading this from blackwallstreet.org and / our history. And he said, and I want to read in the right place so that you can get the framework, because I'm not going to be able to read the whole thing to you. But I would suggest going to blackwallstreet.org / our history if you want to see this article. It says, of the qualities that impressed out-of-town visitors of Tulsa in the days before the race riot, one of them was just how new and up-to-date everything seemed. All the buildings were modern. They had electric trolleys. You don't understand. This was a black city. Here in America, now on the African continent, this may not sound strange to you, but this was a black city in the South, right after the days of slavery. They had freshly painted houses. It was beautiful. So they built a bridge over the river, and this is where they were. In 1910, thanks to the forest derricks, which had risen up over the nearby fields, Tulsa had mushroomed into a raucous boom town of more than 10,000. Astonishingly, its real growth was only beginning. By 1920, the population of Greater Tulsa had skyrocketed to more than 100,000 people. So if you can imagine, from 1910, in just 10 years, it went from 10,000 people to 100,000 people. Now, that wasn't the surprising part. The surprising part was the quality of people that came into this city. Because of the quality of people that came into the city, the technology of the city was amazing, off the chain. Brand new houses, electric railways. They had a regional commercial center. They had their own gas company, oil companies. Tank manufacturer was there. These are black cities. This is a black city. Of course, they had the farms and the ranches. 4 different railroads: the Frisco, the Santa Fe, the Caddy, and the Midland Valley came through there, served the city. 2 separate interurban train lines. All-purpose bridge spanned the Arkansas River near 11th Street, while street repair owing to the ever-increasing number of automobiles was practically constant. And this was the invention of the automobile, and these black folks had these things. So this was a booming telephone service, 2 daily newspapers. But they have 4 different telegraph companies. So these were successful people. There were doctors, dentists, 200 attorneys were practicing at the time there. They had a motion picture theaters, billiard halls, speakeasies. So they had all the latest technology. But then they ran across a problem. So, and I don't want to talk about the problem so much, because the point is not the problem that they have, and we can talk about it a little bit, but it's not the problem that they had, because quite frankly, how they responded to the problem is often how we respond to the problems here in America. Because we get displaced often times like this. We were displaced in the neighborhood that I grew up. There's this rule: divide and conquer. So if you divide and conquer a people, if you divide a people, you can conquer them. But what's more important is, as they were coming out of the age of the slaves, where the word slave was still acceptable. And moving into an age where slavery was no longer acceptable. These black men and women came together in a community using skills that were innate in them, trusting one another, all using their own individual talents and skill sets to build a community of believers. Now in Christianity, they talk about coming together in the temple. The one challenge, and I've worked in ministry for over 15 years, or if not longer, in some respect or the other. Usually volunteer, but I have worked as an assistant pastor as well. But I've been around that community for a while, and we keep in mind, never lose sight of the 9. And I want to keep going back to this because I really want you to understand that everything I speak about is related. I want you to understand it. Keep in mind the 9 areas of community. And there are other things, but I want to get the basics out of the way. So these people came together, which was natural for them. It was natural for them. Trusting each other. It happened during the Harlem Renaissance in New York. This was not the only area that blacks, African Americans came together, and some people would call them Moors. Doesn't matter. The principles are they came together. And they drew their own individual talents and communed together. Libraries, movies, community centers, what we would call community centers now, back then were billiard halls, meeting places, all recognizing each other's talents. You know, you can see these stories in the Bible, you know, the coming together and that sort of thing. Christians take it and they use it for the Christian message. But what the Christian message has always been a set of principles to be used in this life. Ascribed to God as his methodology for living successfully. And it works for more than just the Christian. It works for whomever will use the principles. The principles have been taken from us, and even in the Bible it says that the people of the world are wiser than people who consider themselves born of God, because the people of the world will use the principles freely to become successful. In fact, the people of the world will not only use the principles freely to become successful, they will teach you to serve them while they're using those principles. The people of the world know the 9 areas of community. That's why reading books like The Art of War, The Book of the 5 Rings, or even Mein Kampf, which was Hitler's book, you will see that they're very aware of these principles. These are God's natural laws, principles, statutes, judgments in the world, on this earth. But it's the person using the principles that is bad. It's not the principles themselves. These people came together and operated in those principles of community. Now, what happened to them afterwards was tragic. Because we're talking about a history from 1830 all the way up to 1921, which is a very, very, very short period of time. You're only talking about 91 years. And then all of a sudden, and listen, this is the oldest story ever told. Because what happened with them, where another culture comes in and decimates what they had. It's the same thing. It happened to the Egyptians. It's even happened to the great tribes of Israel. It happened to the great tribes of Israel when God was calling them disobedient. And he would use the Assyrians against them, their mortal enemy. Just as he used Pharaoh against them. And hear what I'm saying. It all depends on what perspective you tell the story from. Because if you tell it from the story of the Pharaoh in Egypt, it's the same story told differently. So the idea is you have to understand the principles and you have to submit yourself to the natural laws of God or the natural laws of this earth and how things operate, and you have to trust your people. And what Damien was saying is it's interesting that we find it easier to trust people of other cultures before we'll trust people in our culture. Before you listen to me, someone who has countless, not countless, but, over 17, 18, maybe 19 years of experience in ministry. I forget how many years, since 1988. Oh my God, it's 19 years. 88? Let's see, 88 and 12 is 12 years. That would make it 2000. 2000 plus 16 years is 28 years. 28 years. So, but before you'll believe me, you'll listen to a TV preacher or someone else of a different skin color or a different background, and he may be saying the same thing I'm saying, but when it comes out of his mouth, you give it more power. That's the root. Because you trust the person, and this is a generational problem. This is not an individual problem. This is a generational problem. You'll trust the person that does not have a stake in your future over a person who has a stake in your future. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. What happened to these folks is there was a riot in the town, and then it's reported that even from air and the city was decimated, which means if it was from air, chances are the government was involved. It started over a relationship with a black man and a white woman, which is not untypical. and the city was destroyed and never rebuilt again. Chances are, because there's another principle called the Judas principle. There had to be, or chances are there was someone that gave them the approval or gave them the information that they needed to be able to take out a whole city in one day. At least one person. Burnt the whole town down in a day. Keep in mind, we're talking about a whole town. You know, there's a story of a man named Jesus where a man named Judas was sitting at the table with him, and he went and he sold information on Jesus, which Jesus already knew he was going to do anyway. In fact, he sent him away. And he says, go do it. And for 30 pieces of silver, he sold the man, his employer, off because he was also treasurer for Jesus as he did his ministry for over 3 years. And I can't say he was treasurer for 3 years, but I will say, you know, he did his ministry for about 3.5 years. And Judas was there. And he sold him out. One of the biggest problems we have in our community is that we're scared that we're going to get sold out by our brother. And I got to say this, you will always be sold out by someone. You just have to know how to navigate the relationships. And we don't know how to do that. And that's what this program is for. And that's why I'm hoping I will be able to continue to come to you in this way. Anyway, that is the show for today. These shows come to you Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. That means Wednesdays are mine, Saturdays and Sundays are mine. Those other 4 days are for you. I am your chosen one. This is the Paul C. Dozier broadcast coming to you from Carson, California. I hope you enjoyed this show. I hope to hear from you. To get in contact with me, please contact me. Let me know that these shows are, first of all, being listened to. Second of all, so that I know what's important to you as well. PCDradio.com. PCDradio.com. Put in your email address at the bottom. YouTube, you can find me at Paul C. Dozier on YouTube. Paul C. Dozier on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. We broadcast this live over our YouTube channel there. And, of course, you can find me on Facebook at Paul Dozier. Right there on Facebook. And also at PCD Radio. At PCD Radio. I appreciate and love you all. God bless you. Do well in life. And I'll talk to you soon.